I don't understand. Why are you trying to dehumanize him like this if you don't like the guy? You know how many people I've disliked online? I've disliked other streamers. There's plenty of people. I totally get you don't have to like Vaush. I think there's plenty of valid reasons for people to dislike Vaush, right? But why do you want to just dehumanize him? If you just don't like him, don't talk to the guy. This is a huge stream today. I have a lot to cover, okay? I put out a video and I streamed before about like the kind of the Vaush drama. And I had like a mixed response. Like a lot of people felt like my response to it was nuanced. They appreciated the perspective and all of that. And some people felt like I was being a radical centrist. And so I kind of want to like address that criticism because I understand it. And I think some of it is valid. And I'm also going to kind of follow up because since I did that stream and since I did that video, I've actually read the private DMs because that stream, when I covered that drama, it was just about what I saw on Twitter. And I'd read all the Twitter messages. I hadn't read the private DMs. And the DMs actually changed some things for me. Now, if you didn't see my initial video on this, when I looked into the drama that was going on, my conclusion was that first of all, I felt like Kat Blaque was super wrong when it came to releasing the DMs or when she shamed and outed the fact that they had done things sexually before and also commenting disparagingly about his penis. I think that was pretty shitty. But overall, I said that I felt like both kind of the people that were being critical of Vaush were correct if you were looking for a more philosophical perspective, but if you were looking for a more political debate perspective focused on trying to kind of have a utilitarian idea of creating a greater good and winning a war, right? Which is, I think, how Vaush sees things. And I can see that, especially if you're trans, why you would see, the fight for trans rights as a war. You're willing to sacrifice minor things for kind of greater good. And I could see both sides of their argument, right? And I really understood his argument being like, why are we focusing so much on something so minuscule, like some minor misogyny here, when we're talking about like this billionaire that is like literally wreaking havoc on the trans community? Like, this is why is everyone's focus on me? And I thought that was a very valid response. But as a woman, I didn't like seeing Vaush being sexist, right? I mean, anyone here that's femme, like, or a woman, like, it's like you know that it's, like seeing someone talk like that, it's like we've all been talked to like that at some point. So it's just kind of like, I don't want to say trigger because it's not technically a trigger, but it's like, it's just invokes bad memories, right? So I also understand why people weren't happy about it. And I could see that there could be a negative effect of like when someone plays into like a stereotype, especially when they're not of that person. So like, it's like when I see a Jewish person being like stereotypical, right? Like when I see like Weinstein, like controlling the media and then like oppressing women, I'm like, God damn it. Fuck, man. I'm trying to fight for us. Why do you have to make us look bad? Like there's always like that feeling when you're a minority, like you get really frustrated when, someone plays into a stereotype that does negatively affect you. And so I could see why people are mad at Vaush for that. But I don't think it should have to do with Vaush's identity. I think like if a trans person was being misogynist, it could be bad too. So those were kind of my conclusions at the time. Now, I've since read the DMs. Dun, 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 dun. There's a lot, okay? There's a lot. I fell asleep reading them. It's a long conversation. There's parts of it that are a little funny, okay? I'm not gonna lie to you. There's this whole like running thing throughout the DMs of like Kat Blaque like typing like crazy. She's like, right? And Vaush is like, please, I can't type as fast, right? And he's like trying to respond to her, and she's like she's just such a fast, amazing typer. Like she should probably enter some kind of competition. And so Vaush, like throughout the entire conversation, it's really funny because Vaush will be like really mad, but he's like, wait, stop, you're typing too fast. You're typing too fast. Okay, I should make fun of it because it's pretty dark because there's actually some really fucked up shit in here. This is how it starts. So we don't talk anymore, which is completely fine. I think that that's a great way to start that, right? Because just in the beginning of this DM, Vaush is aware that for women, when like an old ex messages you, there is a little bit of anxiety. Like, is he mad that we're not sexting anymore? Right? Like, is he mad that we're not talking like that anymore? Is he mad we're not romantic anymore? Is this like an angry ex? And Vaush is very aware of that dynamic. And so he already preemptively says, it's fine. If I was Kat Blaque, I would have appreciated that. For all the dudes in the room, it's a really good thing in that instance to say that. I think that was A-okay. Now, then he says, but I do take issue with some of the stuff you said and would like to talk about it. Right? Privately, of course. I don't want you to drag you on stream. That last sentence, I know what he meant by that, and I actually think, English-wise, I think he's technically correct. Privately, because what he's communicating here is they have a private dynamic. Let's chat about it privately. I don't want this to be a hate war online. Like let's just deal with this privately, which is the mature way to handle it as a content creator. I think that was really great. And he explains that he just genuinely doesn't want to be dragging her on stream. That's not the kind of way he wants to solve this. He'd rather discuss it privately. Now, she takes that a different way, and I actually understand why she takes it differently, because it's again, it's a vague response. So if you're already feeling on the defensive and you don't trust someone, I can see why you're going to take this badly. She takes this as a threat. If you don't talk to me, I'm going to drag you on stream. So the way she takes that is kind of like when someone's like, I don't want to kill you, but I've got, I really don't want to kill you, so you better give me your money. And that's kind of how she takes it. This is my theory, is that initial misunderstanding is what starts this conversation off to a very toxic conversation. I don't know what else to call it. So that's why I'm immediately, the reason when the part where she says, you have my full permission to drag me on stream, that's her puffing up and be like, you don't scare me. I'm not going to fall for your threats. Which, good for her if he was threatening her, but he wasn't. But I understand why she interprets it that way, right? And voila, you've got this massive misunderstanding. Now, she just completely rants. I won't watch it, and I'm not. And basically, to summarize this rant, it's, I don't care about you. I don't watch your stream. I find you irrelevant. You can talk about me however which you want, blah, blah. He tries to defend himself, right? And he really tries to get her to go with this hypothetical. He wants to demonstrate this hypothetical. If Ben Shapiro is a racist who cloaks his attacks against Black people with criticisms, so you could see Vaush upset that he can't type as fast as her. He's trying to give an example of how he feels even when Ben Shapiro has some points, the left doesn't focus on where he's correct about certain instances, like misogyny in Black lyrics or something. The left doesn't focus on that because they're focusing on the larger picture. And so he's trying to use that analogy. She doesn't want to do the analogy. She doesn't, because she feels like she's playing, she doesn't want to play his game. She feels like he's made a threat. And this conversation just keeps going, right? And it's just this back and forth over and over again of her saying, you don't matter, I don't care about you, I'm not going to pay attention to your stuff, right? And him saying, please just do the analogy, right? Just do the example, engage with, he's like, you have to answer the hypothetical, ! Kat. Okay. And she's like, no, I'm not going to engage with your hypothetical. And this is and focuses much more on that she doesn't like the misogyny he engaged in. And so they're just they're not only arguing about the issue, they're arguing about the argument, right? And this is back and forth. Oh, I don't know how they have both had the patience for this. So as we go down, right? At some point, Kat actually says that she has some sympathy for JKR for the abuse she went through. And I think Vaush doesn't understand that, right? But I think most women who have been through some kind of abuse or something, they get it, right? On one hand, they don't see JK as, even if you're frustrated with her transphobia, they don't see her as this black and white figure. They see her, because ContraPoints, if you remember the video she did on J.K. Rowling, ContraPoints really reiterated that there were two different types of TERFs. There were TERFs that are really just conservatives, that are just bigots. And then there are TERFs like J.K. Rowling who, again, are still bigots, but they actually come from, they've been, you could see that they've come from abuse, they're genuinely scared of misogyny, all of this kind of stuff. And I think that they have some disagreements based on that kind of stuff. I started to notice this trend of Kat really focusing on downplaying how much she cared about Vaush, right? And he's never making any personal mentions like that. In fact, the only time he says anything personally about her is how much he respects her and how much he likes her and how much he thinks that she's great. And when she talks about him, it's very much like, I don't care about you. And it's hard to know how much she's saying as in a personal way, like as like an ex, when you're like, oh, I don't give a shit about my ex, right? And how much of that is like literally commenting on his work and on him as a content creator and like a coworker, because that's what fellow content creators really are to one another. They're coworkers, competitors, etc. She really starts focusing on the aspect of, on how much she really doesn't care, which I haven't watched Kat Blaque's content. I've heard she's incredibly smart. I'm sure that's true. I'm sure she does. I'm sure she knows way more about trans issues than me. But when it comes to like how she was speaking as just a normal human being, she was really engaging in a lot of just textbook toxic behavior. And it really starts building up throughout the conversation. Like, just, if you really want someone to think that you don't care about them, mentioning over and over how much you don't care about them, it looks really cringy, okay? It looks really, really cringy. If she really didn't care about him, she wouldn't have responded to the DM. But she obviously did, because she was typing so much to him. And so mentioning that you just don't care, all it looks like is that you're just trying to hurt the person and that it's not actually genuine. As I'm scrolling down, okay, there's a part that gets really, really bad. And I actually highlighted it, like, because I'm reading this like late at night. I'm like cuddled with my, my covers, okay, falling asleep. And I find this part and I'm like, holy shit, how is she saying this? And why did she release these DMs? Because the way she argues it over here, she's in the tweet, she's arguing that the reason why she released these DMs was to demonstrate the gross things Vaush said to her privately. And I was like, if Vaush said really bad things to her, I understand why she would release the DMs. I agree with her here that if Vaush said these things, then I think she would have the right to release the DMs. But I actually think it's this weird form of projection. Or I don't know if we're living in different realities, because I actually think that she's the one that says the gross things. And I just don't understand. I feel like this actually really looks really bad. And I'm shocked she released these DMs herself. I don't know if there's like a lack of self-awareness or something. And I'm surprised there hasn't been more of an uproar about this part of the DMs. And maybe because it's not so obvious, but I feel like it is. Like, I'm not an expert on psychological manipulation and stuff. I've read some basic stuff just to protect myself, but this is like textbook stuff, and I'm going to read it to you, right? And I don't even think I have to comment much on it for you to understand what's wrong with it. What do you even imagine I have against you? You have said and done plenty of things that I find distasteful. Your person, like many other people who I've completely written off because of how you engage in isms. Life is too short for me to be hyperfixated on a person who entertains themselves with misogyny, sexism, and racism. I do not think of you nor hold really anything against you. I just dismiss you as a person who speaks out of both sides of their mouth and wants to be pat on the back for it. I mean, I could act like a teacher and be like, guys, what's the really fucked up part of this message? Now, just to demonstrate, this is 22 pages down, okay? She is saying how much she doesn't think about him and doesn't care about him and dismisses him 22 pages down of all of this. The reason why I highlighted this, there's two things that she does that are abusive in this conversation, emotionally abusive. Or should I say toxic? But no, they are textbook abuse shit. So number one is she gaslights him, right? And when I say gaslighting, I'm not saying the way everyone says gaslighting. Like, I literally mean she gaslights him. Now, a common way of gaslighting is when you say one sentence and then the next sentence, you completely change what you said the previous sentence. And then when that person heard the previous sentence, you just act like you never said it. And and the reason why this is so manipulative, right? And people do it all the time, right? Where they'll like insult you and then the next second they'll say something else, and say that they never insulted you. And you'll be like, bro, you just insulted me, like literally the second ago. And this way they get to have all the positive effects for them, of insulting you, of bringing you down, making you feel shitty, making themselves feel superior. But they also don't have any of the after effects, the consequences of making you feel shitty, right? Because They got to convince you they never said it. And so you just end up with all these shitty thoughts in your head, right? And you don't know who to blame. Yeah, it's eating their cake and having it too. It's nasty shit. And I've had people do this to me, right? And it's like, it's such textbook bad behavior, right? And that's not even all of it. So, and I'll just show you where she does it. Where she says, what do you even imagine I have against you? Obviously, what she's communicating here, okay, is that she has nothing against him. So this has been a long thing, that she doesn't care about him enough to have something against him. She doesn't care about him enough to hate him. She doesn't care about him enough, like you're so low on my totem pole, I don't even dislike you, right? Like, that's what she's communicating. And then in the next second, the next sentence, you have said and done plenty of things that I find distasteful. So she immediately counters her previous sentence. And then, just in case you didn't hear this part, she says, your person, like many other people who I've completely written off. First of all, that's a really pretentious way to say I don't care about you. It just comes off really cringe. Like, your person? Like, people talk about like that in the 16th century. Her person was disgusting to me. I haven't heard someone talk in this century. I actually like that she talks like 16th century. I think it's cool, but it's a little weird in this instance. Yeah, and it's so dehumanizing. I don't understand. Why are you trying to dehumanize him like this if you don't like the guy? You know how many people I've disliked online? Okay? I've disliked other streamers. There's plenty of people. I totally get you don't have to like Vaush. I think there's plenty of valid reasons for people to dislike Vaush, right? But why do you want to just dehumanize him? If you just don't like him, don't talk to the guy. Don't respond to the guy. Why are you trying to make him feel disgusting like that? Like, holy shit, some people fucking kill themselves after hearing shit like that. Your entire person, like many other people I've completely written off because how you engage in isms. Which is just, again, I hate that moral purity thing. Like, has Vaush engaged in like sexist stuff? Yes. Has he done racist stuff? Yes. I've seen him do stuff that I consider anti-Semitic. Sure, right? But again, that doesn't encompass his entire person. And I've seen Vaush do much more positive things for Jewish people than negative people, and he's always trying to learn and better himself. So it's like, judge him as a complex human being. But like, honestly, even if you don't, like, why say these mean things? And again, if Vaush just posted this picture on his Twitter, I bet you, like, if I hadn't read the DMs, I'd be like, well, maybe he's insulting her throughout the whole conversation, right? And the dynamic is really toxic. But I read through all his DMs. He never insults her once. At points, does he sound a little condescending? Sure. Vaush kind of does that, right? Because he uses words that, like, I don't know, he uses complex words, blah, blah, blah. Like, he could sometimes sound like that. But he says things like, I care about you and I value you. And then she responds with saying, I've completely written you off as a person. And then, okay, I'll just continue on this, right? I do not think of you, nor hold really anything against you. So she gaslights him a second time. She starts it off with a sentence, counters it, immediately creating the first sentence as a gaslighting sentence. And then gaslights him a second time, literally within like the same paragraph, within the same message. So I do not think of you, nor hold really anything against you. And then this is the kicker. This is the final kicker. Like, the real part, if you were not sure if she was initially trying to be dehumanizing here. If you're like, oh, like, maybe she's just saying that she dismisses him. She's not really dehumanizing him. Just in case you misunderstood her, and just in case Vaush misunderstood her, she wants you to know, 100%, I just dismiss you as a person who speaks out of both sides of their mouth and wants to be pat on the back for it. Now, this message is not alone. Again, the entire DM exchange is really, really toxic. But this one was the one where it was the most obvious, and I couldn't believe, I was like, if I ever talk like someone like that, I would not want people to see those DMs. I think that in Kat's mind, Vaush is the same misogynistic dude bro that she's dealt with 100 times. That's why she feels justified talking to him like this. Yes, no, I totally agree with you. I don't know Kat's soul. I don't know anything about her. She might be a good person, right? Good people can engage in really, really toxic behavior. I am not going to engage in the same things that she did. dismissing her as a person. I do not have any information to be able to do that, right? All I'm doing right now is criticizing her behavior, which is all we can do, and how she spoke to someone. And Vaush's gender and sex and all of that stuff, it really shouldn't be relevant when it comes to being emotionally abusive to someone. When I read these DMs, a lot of shit hit me much more. And suddenly I understood also why he was so mad at ContraPoints a lot, because ContraPoints had obviously entered the discussion, started defending Kat without, obviously she hasn't read these messages yet at the time, the way I hadn't read the messages yet. And so someone that he admired comes in and hasn't seen his messages. And I genuinely think if ContraPoints saw these and looked at them, she'd be like, even if she's really good friends with Kat, because I was friends for a long time with someone who engaged in lots of toxic behavior like this, right? And I would try to make comments. I'd be like, man, it's not cool to talk to someone like this, right? Like, look at what you're like dehumanizing him, right? Like, I know you've been hurt a lot by like dudes in the past and all that, but he can't be the representative for all of them, right? It's just not cool. But yeah, so this is just like this is basically the conclusion that I've come to, and I really found this disturbing. Am I crazy with how disturbing this is? I don't know. I found this really, really bad. I thought about tweeting it out, but I was like, no, I don't like Twitter. Twitter's just gonna cause way more chaos and just make things way worse. But I just like, I'm actually shocked Vaush isn't hurt more than he is. Because being talked to like that by a content creator in your area, by like an ex, like that sucks, right? And then tons of people hating on you and calling you misogynist when you're being talked to like this. The term is to the pain, because enough pain to pacify and cause complacency is to assert yourself higher than your opposition. I don't see this working on Vaush though. It's bird culture, this reference as a bitch move. Oh, yeah. Her DM sounds very manipulative and spiteful. I guess making hurtful jokes and being serious about trans advocacy is hypocritical. I think it's just not having a sense of humor on Kat's part, and many others feel like she just has a vendetta against Vaush. And again, even if she has a vendetta against Vaush, it's like, I get it. Like, I get it. Not everyone, Vaush is a very spicy person. Not everyone's gonna like Vaush. You have every right to not like Vaush. Why are you gonna, like, why are you just trying to hurt him? Why are you just trying to hurt this person? I've had people do the nastiest shit to me, and I like don't want to just hurt, like, I don't say this shit to them. I just don't get it. If you don't want to engage with this hypothetical, stop responding to him. Block him. It just feels like she wants him to, like, you know, like, I don't know, be nailed to the cross and die for all of the other men's sins. And I think Vaush feels like everyone is against him. Like, everyone. And it probably feels really, what's the word I'm looking for? He probably, like, I don't know. He just probably feels really like he's on his own. And it just makes me sad. Vaush said he feels alone and isolated a lot with how much hate he gets. Yeah. I can't blame him. Like, holy shit. And to have people talk to him like that, especially when he's someone that's, like, grown over time. Like, when I first entered the space, people told me that Vaush was anti-Semitic, right? And to be careful as a Jewish person. I'm like, okay. I mean, I didn't know much about Vaush, so I was like, I'll be careful, right? Thanks for the heads up, bro. Right? And it was because of the Israel comment that he had made about wiping it off the map with something that rhymes with bass. And so I was warned about that. And my first conversation with him about, like, Israel-Palestine stuff was, he was super reasonable with me. He said that he'd watched some of my content and he found it really educational. And then he invited me to a Palestinian rights, like, and to a Palestinian fundraiser, which was like, oh my God, thank you. Like, you know how many people just dismiss me from that because I'm Jewish, right? Or because I don't want Israel wiped off the map, that somehow that also means I also don't want to help Palestinians. Like, he invited me to that and we raised tons of money together. And then on top of that, when another streamer, I'm not going to mention their name, was using the quote unquote, I'm just being critical of Israel thing, but really being insanely anti-Semitic, right? Towards me. Now, let's be clear, like, you could be totally critical of Israel and not be anti-Semitic, right? But there's also ways that you can, like, be like, oh, the Jewish banks, the Zionist banks, she's using her Zionist powers to convert you, like all this kind of shit. And he was the one that called a lot of that more like subtle anti-Semitism out as being anti-Semitism. And I didn't want to be the person calling that shit out, and it meant a lot that he did. So I don't know, like, it's like this is again why I hate this culture of just expecting moral purity. Like, people are complex, people change, right? He can have a dumb opinion one time and then educate himself and have a good opinion the next. Like, he can say things that I find distasteful, but also say things that I find really useful. People are complex. You don't need to I don't like, people are morally gray. I just hate this shit. Like, you are either in the good category or the bad category, and that's how this world works. Yeah, it was a great fundraiser, and it meant a lot to me that he invited me, right? You guys know that I actually joined, in my undergrad, I joined a Palestinian rights organization where I tried to. And when they heard my last name, which is very visibly Jewish, they asked me if I wanted Israel wiped off the map. Now, I have family in Israel, right? And and I was like, I want Palestinians to have their own state and their own sovereignty, right? And I want them to eventually live in peace and hopefully eventually have one state after a time. But yeah, I don't want Jews kicked out and sent back to where they came from. I'm sorry. And because of that, I got kicked out. I was like, that's so fucked up. It's like asking, I don't know, it's just crazy. It's like asking a black person to kind of radiate, just say oh, we're only going to accept you in conservative culture if you say all the things that are actually really racist towards black people. Then we'll accept you as a black person. It's anyways, I don't want to talk about Israel. So I just want to reiterate, I'm not crazy by saying how toxic this is, these messages. Okay, do you guys like how bad? This is my stylus on my phone. So this is me trying to draw, and I'm like, why is it such a thick line? Why is it such a thin line here? What the fuck? It kind of looks like a penis with one ball. Yeah, that's how I knew Vaush would look at it. So, I do not think this is okay to normalize the behavior to protect purity. Yeah, it's really, really bad. And she seems to have no awareness of this. Seems to have no awareness of it, and seems to be so focused on him that he said really gross things privately. I went through them. I went through them. I really didn't see anything. If anything, you could say that Vaush wasn't you could say he was being maybe annoying, right? Because he just kept saying come on, just do my analogy, right? You could say, but he wasn't being rude. He wasn't being mean. I just don't get it. Towards the end of the conversation, he gets maybe more heated when he realizes that he's just being dismissed because he's white. There I go with my white boy opinions again. But I really don't think he's being rude. But again, maybe I'm biased. I get along well with Vaush. So again, I don't know Kat. So maybe there's a bias here. I'm interested in hearing your perspective, guys. If you want to go through the DMs, I'll link them in chat. But I don't know. It just, that one really, I don't know. That one really, really bothered me. And you understand why taking these messages alongside her leaking the DMs and talking about his dick comes off as really abusive as a whole. Yeah. No, it's really fucked up. It's really fucked up. And I genuinely think if Contra was looking at this totally unbiased, I think she would be grossed out by it too. I hope she does kind of look at it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what Kat's been through. I assume that she's been through a bunch of shit, right? I know trans women go through tons of shit. And just being a woman, she probably gets talked down to a lot, like I have. So I understand being defensive when someone is. And again, I want to repeat that first sentence. The privately, of course, I don't want to drag you on stream. She takes that as a threat, even though it's not. Even though it's him being genuine. That's him saying, I just care about you. I'm not going to drag you on stream. And she takes that as, okay, I don't want to drag you on stream, but you're going to force me to, right? She takes that as a threat. And that's why she's being so, he's trying to solve it. She's trying to kind of push out her chest and be not you know, be strong enough to resist the threat. Like maybe she hasn't resisted in the past. I have no clue. Like, and that's kind of how the chaos just starts. And it's just super toxic and really, 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 really sad. He meant drag as in bring her on screen. He thought he meant drag in. Yeah. I think that's what he meant too. It was just a miscommunication. Like if I was okay, if I had been the one talking to Vaush, like if I was Kat here, and I said privately, of course, I don't want to drag you on stream, and there's two potential like options on what he could mean there. I'd be like, do you mean drag me on stream, like bring me on stream, or shit on me, right? And then his response would have probably been like, no, like I would just rather have the discussion privately. That's what I meant. And then voila, problem solved. And she probably wouldn't have been on this like abusive, toxic rant of constantly telling him that like he's wrong, but she doesn't give a shit about him. Thank God that like Vaush didn't say anything super private. That would really suck. I think it's just, and again, this is not a reason. You don't need to stop watching Kat Blaque. Again, you don't need to cancel Kat Blaque for this, right? People are complex. People have good and bad in them, okay? I don't know if you watch Game of Thrones. Don't watch the last season. It's really bad, okay? People are gray. Human beings are complex. I have positive traits and I have negative traits, right? And again, I think from what I hear, she is a great essayist. She's probably a really great advocate for the trans community. But some people who do a lot of good in some ways can also be really bad privately, right? Like they can do really shitty things privately. They can be really toxic to their friends. Like I've seen it all the time. Like even in the nonprofit world, it's like a joke that a lot of like the people who are doing the best in humanity are often the most like toxic and abusive to their partners. People are complex. Again, so this is why like don't just immediately dismiss her. I mean, I don't know her content. I haven't watched a lot of her I don't think I've seen one video. But I watched a lot of ContraPoints. I'm still gonna watch ContraPoints. I still think ContraPoints does really great work. I just think she fucked up here. She stood up for a friend before she kind of, thought about the consequences. I watched Kat for years and years, and I don't want to see her be abusive to creators who are generally good job. I want her to constructive input. Yeah, so I mean, maybe give her constructive criticism. I don't know, but make sure not to do it in like a super toxic way. Like, don't send her harassment or anything like that. But like, yeah, but it's not cool. It's not cool how she spoke to him. And honestly, gender just shouldn't be a factor here. Right? It just shouldn't. And honestly, if we follow the Idpol line of questioning, like really far down, I was hearing some people's defenses of Kat. Like I was listening to Vaush's stream the other night. I don't know if it was last night or the night before, but someone came on to defend Kat, right? And they were focused so much on like, I think they made an argument that all Black people are traumatized and have PTSD, and this was a trauma response. First of all, and diagnosing an entire race seems like a bad idea. Okay, I don't know how. I don't feel like it's a good idea. I'm sure plenty of Black people do have PTSD. Plenty of people have PTSD. But like dismissing everything as a trauma response, like no, like she was messaging and texting him. Like it does not excuse any of this behavior, and I really just want to kind of dismiss that idea. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And what's crazy is that logic is so dangerous, right? Because that logic is literally what props up the TERF argument. Like that's literally the TERF argument, right? That Vaush is so angry at in the first place. Because this is what J.K. Rowling always does. Where she says, like, no, like, girls shouldn't see the penis in the bathroom, right? Because all women were traumatized by the penis. The penis, the penis, the penis. It's not that I see trans women as men. It's just that they have the penis. That's what they'll say. God, please do not clip me in a context there. But that's like, And that's the argument that they'll use, that like they've been traumatized, that they've been raped. This is how like women's rape centers argue that they shouldn't have to take trans women who get raped, so trans women just have no place to go. And it feels like, I know everyone's hurt is very subjective, but there is something weird that, like, you know, so you can get a shitty message on Twitter, and that like that me getting some like anti-Semitic message on Twitter is like equivalent of like a woman being raped in Darfur and seeing her family hacked to death. It's just really hard for me to like compare it, but I'm not an expert on this stuff, so you can dismiss that. But it's really hard. I don't know, like this idea of just applying trauma to everything. If everything's trauma, the whole concept of trauma is that it's something really, really bad, right? So if everything's trauma, nothing's trauma. I hate the way it's being used to excuse things. It just reminds me of like the way people are excusing Mr. Girl shit. I could be wrong, but I don't think that was his argument. He acknowledged that whether or not Kat was reacting to a perceived microaggression and trauma, Kat was still ultimately responsible for poor behavior and wasn't justified. Towards the end of the argument, it really felt like he changed his tune. Like that's how it felt like it started. I don't know if you watched the whole thing, Cornbread. But anyways, that's my conclusion to the Vaush thing. I'm interested to hear your perspectives. If you guys want to read the messages in your own time, preferably not when I'm streaming, I would love to hear your comments on my subreddit. My subreddit's r/aristocracy. My perspective is Vaush is bad. Okay. Anyways.